Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Bento Bureau, the show where we talk about Japan from an international perspective. I'm your host, Basim Hijazi. You can call me Buzz as well. And with me on my right, that's not my right, this is my right, my fellow co host, Mr. Bastian Harth from Germany. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Buzz. How are you doing? I'm doing very well.
Well, it's a good afternoon for me, Bastian. How's it for you?
For me, is it a good morning? Tell me, who do we have with us today? I'm quite excited for this episode, to be honest.
Glad you asked, Bastian. So, you know how we've been talking a lot on the show lately about startups in Japan, the foreign community, the role of women. Well, today we've brought someone who could talk to us about all those things, but at the same time give us some insights into some of Japan's legislative systems that govern all these actors, someone who's involved in the startup business and also has extensive interest and knowledge on immigration law in Japan. I'm very
That sounds
pleased.
cool.
It is cool, and I'm very pleased to introduce this episode's guest, Miho Tanaka. She's the founder of Startup Work Incorporated in Japan. How are you doing, Miho?
I'm good, thank you, Buzz. Yep, I'm Miho. Nice to meet you, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Nice to see
So, Miho, you are the founder of Startup Work Incorporated in Japan. It's a one stop shop aimed to helping foreign entrepreneurs learn how to navigate the business and startup world in Japan. But before that, you used a lot of your vast knowledge in regarding visa processes and immigration law to help empower several startups and entrepreneurs in Japan, which later led to you forming that business. So, welcome to Bento Bureau. And let's start this discussion by just asking you a little bit about your extensive experience with startups. So tell us a bit about what is Startup Work Inc. and why did you decide to start this organization?
Okay, so startup work is for foreign entrepreneurs, mainly foreign entrepreneurs trying to start a business in Japan. And I usually help legal procedures, including incorporation and visa procedures, and giving some tax knowledge about Japan. And before launching this company, I was working in a center called Tokyo One Stop Business Establishment Center, which was co-established by the government of Japan and Tokyo government. And at that center, I was working as a PR marketer to promote about the center. And that center was also aimed to support entrepreneurs to start a business mainly in Tokyo because it's under Tokyo government. And I was there about 2 years, and I was promoting the center, but still there are so many things that I don't know practically and what actually international entrepreneurs face in Japan when they try to start a business. So after 2 years, I quit the company, I mean the center, and I started to build my own business by just helping all the entrepreneurs who needs help, including visa process and all this like financial help as well. Then I end up starting my own company, which is Startup Work.
And your company is kind of like a startup itself, isn't it? Have you had some challenges starting it?
Not really, because I think so many startup friends and entrepreneurs friends helped me on the way, and we learned everything like together. So it wasn't too hard for me, honestly.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. The challenges that you experience, I think you've kind of touched about it or on it quickly at the beginning of your introduction. What are some challenges usually foreign entrepreneurs have when they start a business in Japan?
So I think the first one is always language, and this like language used in the any kinds of, for example, like incorporation process, including like the procedures at notary office or legal affairs bureau. These are very difficult sentences even for Japanese. Like I don't know what's written without studying. And yeah, of course, I mean, aside from language, the entire process is very complicated in Japan. which is like all known as a red tape in Japan. So to understand that procedure itself is also complicated. So I usually guide them through all the processes. And yeah, another complication will be, yeah, Japan is not digitalized yet, like the other
Okay.
countries. Mm.
Would
So,
you say? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
so for example, like Japanese government is now trying to launch a like online system where people can incorporate their business at one stop online, but still like UX UI is not yet built well. So it's hard to find out how to actually smoothly launch the business in Japan.
You know, we are Japan from an international perspective. That's always our motto. And while Buzz and I probably have some idea of how the digitalization looks like in Japan, from the outside, I think the image is still that Japan is very far into digitalization. You know, we think
Yeah.
of robots, we think of all these old Gundam movies, right? For example.
Well, not
How's the
everyone thinks of
situation?
Gundams, but sure, yeah. High
Fair,
tech stuff,
fair.
sure.
High-tech stuff for sure. And we think of the big companies like Toyota, Canon, etc. How's the situation actually in Japan? What is your impression of the digitalization in Japan?
So I think some companies are very good at like producing this kind of, for example, robot or like supercomputer. But as a whole, as a system in Japan, in a society, I think it's not built yet.
Okay.
So yeah, especially administrative process is still depending on like paper and all hanko, everything.
Ah, the Hanko part, yes. So there's a lot of red tape, you said. But I would also be interested to kind of know. So, first of all, how do you help them actually with the red tape? Are you the one going a bit into detail? Are you the one handling the documents and everything for them?
Sometimes I handle some documents for them, and sometimes I outsource this documentation for some legal advisors. For example, like not let's say administrative scriveners in Japanese gyosei shoshi, or judicial scriveners, like who can handle all this like registration work or yeah paperwork for these people. And in terms of immigration process, I outsourced this documentation process for immigration law, let's say immigration specialists who can handle this. Yeah.
You know, one of the experiences I remember when I lived in Japan and how I met so many foreigners along with me who were studying along with me in Bastion is that there was a common trend among all of us that we all kind of complained a lot about Japanese bureaucracy and paperwork. So I want to know, given that you work a lot with, foreign entrepreneurs, what is your perspective on how Japan's, legal paperwork is managed and the bureaucracy around it? Does it like kind of surprise you when people from abroad come and tell you like, oh man, why is it so complicated? Or do they say that? Well, I mean, I imagine they would because they come to you for consulting, right? So I'd be
Yes.
curious, yeah, what's your experience on that?
Yeah, it is very complicated. And, like during the COVID, like although everyone is supposed to do remote work, I had to go to several offices, including legal affairs bureau, immigration bureau, and notary office or tax office or banks every single day. So I was going out every single day. So and also like without going, I cannot finish the procedures because they want me to, for example, stamp a hanko in front of them, and also like system itself is, as I mentioned, it's complicated. So when I registered my own company, the system was, I mean, the procedures wasn't so complicated, but to get all the guideline from the government to use the system, it was like 30 pages, and I had to launch my company in 3 hours.
Wow.
So that, just finding a right button on the system was so difficult.
I'm wondering, are there lots of international entrepreneurs who want to start a business in Japan?
Yes, actually, I think yeah, there are a lot. Mm.
So why is Japan so attractive for foreign entrepreneurs to start a business? What do you think?
I think the first thing is Japanese market is very unique, completely different from the, for example, Western world. So they're maybe fascinated to target this market. And also, like, the market size is still big. So they, like, if they can, like, get their target audience in Japan, then they can get a certain amount of people. Also, I think if Japanese customers start to, like, how to say, buying the product or service, then it's easier for everybody to, like, follow the, for example, influencer or somebody. So, like, once their product or service is accepted, then it's easy to get penetrated in the market, I think.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the things I always read when they're like people who analyze, like foreign analysts who, you know, make predictions about Japan's market and everything, a lot of the things they mention is how difficult Japan's market is to penetrate as a foreigner, because there is some kind of belief that, you know, it's just preferred to gravitate towards a Japanese product than a foreign product. Like Japanese people always prefer a Japanese product over getting something from outside. I've read that couple of times from, you know, analysts abroad. I wanted to ask you, what's your thought on that? Do you think that holds any water? Do you think that's a real thing?
I think it's changing. So, for example, like 20 years ago, I think Japanese, not only Japanese people, but also the other, like, people in the other countries prefer Japanese product because it's, like, high quality. For example, if they buy something from Mitsubishi or something from Toyota, they know it's not gonna break. But nowadays, like, so many products are here, like, so yeah. For example, like, most of Japanese people have smartphone, which is mainly iPhone, I think.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and also regarding laptop, like not only about Mac, but also, like, yeah, nowadays we have, like, Samsung or different, like, laptops. It's no longer like Toshiba or this, like, mega manufacturer based in Japan. So I think it's, yeah, getting to the rapid change period right now.
And the products and services offered by startups in general, not just foreign startups, are they used? My question relates to how is the startup world in Japan? What's the perspective from your side, and what's the general perspective on it?
So I think the success rate for startup or entrepreneurs who just came to Japan without knowing about Japanese customs and culture in business is not very high. And also, not only for international, like, community, but also, like, if Japanese person try to start a business, I think 95% will need to close the business within 10 years. So the
Wow.
success rate is not high. And so prior to the government job that I had, I was working in a startup. And actually, the reason that why I left the startup was it went bankrupt almost. But that company was a, like, manufacturer, startup and manufacturer. So they're producing a product, but, like, so many mega companies try to imitate or buy all the products. So I think it's, like, for startup, it's kind of scary because these companies have, like, so much R&D center and so much cash, so they can always put so much budget on one product and they can easily imitate. So yeah, to compete with them, it's one obstacle, I guess.
I have one specific question, but before that, competition. You mentioned competition. How is the competition between foreign startups and Japanese startups? Is the community one whole, or is it two separate communities? Because generally there's the expat community and then there's the Japanese community. That's the tendency in Japan. But is it in the startup world that they actually collaborate and work together?
I think they are trying to collaborate, but practically, I think it's still two separate communities because, like, first of all, like the language problem is the first one always. And when I came to Tokyo, like I found international community for startup is completely different from which is Japanese. So all the events were like international, like I mean like English, and the participants is like I would say two-thirds of the participants were from like foreign countries, and only
Okay.
one-third were Japanese. But if I go to any Japanese event, then it's completely like 100% Japanese people.
And with your one-stop shop, you're basically in the middle of both worlds, aren't you?
Yes, but mainly since my strengths or what my company offers is involve visa procedures. So that's the hardest part for international entrepreneurs. So I only target international entrepreneurs as of now.
Buzz, what are you showing us there?
I was showing actually the website of Startup Work Inc. right here, actually. So if anyone wants to check it out, feel free. But actually, I want to go back to what you mentioned about startups in general, Miho. Now, you showed us in our previous conversation with you that you write a lot of blog posts on Medium, actually. So here's your Medium page right here. I've scrolled all the way down because I was checking it out this morning. But you can see you write a lot about things, nonprofit organizations in Japan, rights of foreigners, female entrepreneurs. There's a lot of stuff we can ask you about today. But I thought I could start with this one, which we've kind of touched upon. But I want to know, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what is being said in this article. You're saying Japan startups need help. This is a call to Japan. So what is your message through this article?
Yeah, so I think the main message in that blog post was about so after the COVID, so many companies were in financial troubles. They don't have cash. Like they had to pivot their business, but most companies cannot pivot the business so like fast. And also like they have to let some employees go because they cannot pay because there is no sales generated. So there are so many financial like support from government at the time, including loan program, subsidy program, and like grant for those like mainly small, medium enterprises. But all the financial measures are for the companies operating more than let's say 2-3 years. So like all the startups have to like grow all the time. So they don't have any like sales decline, and also like if their sales decline, then that's the time that they have to go bankrupt. And most of the financial measures say they can support the like companies if the sales goes down about 5%. So basically the companies who can get the support was always like companies who is like already established.
Hmm.
So like yeah, most startups couldn't actually get the financial support, like not only about the sales decline, but also the subsidy was for employee, so full-time employee, Seishain mainly, for like the company. But most of the startups cannot pay for this like social insurance, and like they
Wow.
have to deal with like contractors, right? Because like labor law in Japan is so strict, so like it's very hard to let people go. So these startups cannot like or wasn't paying for social insurance, so they were not applicable to actually apply for this subsidy program as well.
Oh, wow. So,
Yeah, that's the
how would you, as a consultant to startups, advise those who are interested in getting into the market and becoming a player? How would you advise them to overcome an issue like that?
so the COVID was too special.
Mm.
But if they're really in financial like trouble, then like we discussed with some financial institution, including like Japan Finance Corporation, which is the biggest public financial institution in Japan. And I was like trying to communicate as a translator and bring the discussion on the table for them. And regarding the subsidy, yes, like I help the documentation process for some companies. And another issue that I found on the process was there are so many consultants in Japan, like including like judicial scriveners, like all these like scriveners. And also for regarding the subsidy process, there is a specialist called social security attorney. These people are all like holding a national license. And these people are also the one who are eligible to apply for a subsidy on behalf of the clients. But since all the financial measures are very new for all of us, they're like, I cannot help because I have never done this before. Or they probably didn't communicate enough with different offices. Like, I mean, like Japanese Labor Bureau or like all of these like bureau. So like actually they could apply for a long term, but all the consultants that I called say, no, you can only apply for this fall. And like, so that means they cannot cover the cash that they spent in the spring. So this kind of like information, like lack of information was causing additional problem.
We have mentioned, or in this episode, we kind of thought we talk about immigration in Japan and foreigners' rights. Are foreign entrepreneurs usually aware of the system you've just mentioned? I can imagine that when there's no
No,
Japanese
usually.
involved, that it is very challenging to actually get through this system and through this red tape.
So I think nobody knows well about this system. And of course, like most of my clients just arrived Japan, so they don't know about like what's going on. And like, they always get tired of solving every kind of administrative procedures.
Okay. I hope everyone can hear me. Luckily, we can always cut this out in the podcast version, but I had some issues with the internet, it seems.
It looked like you
Let's
were
go
going to
back-
ask a question, and I was just pausing, which is giving you a chance.
Yes. I'm sorry. I think it has been like this for the past 5 minutes. That's
No, it's
always
fine.
the issue with the live stream.
It's easier. It was better than you thought. Don't worry.
Good. Going back to your career path, I'm quite curious. You've mentioned that you jumped from a startup to the governmental sector, and now you're basically independent. Those are basically 3 different kind of job areas. Let me start there. What was your interest in working in a startup, given the fact that most startups, as you just said, cannot give lots of benefits to their employees?
I think the most fascinating thing about startup is we have to grow everything so fast all the time. So like usually I can get more opportunity in the company. So that was the very fun thing to work at startup. And also like if I build something like that's something that I built, like not that like of course it's we all built as a team, but it's easier to see what we achieved. But if it's like for example big organization like corporation, then like it's very hard to see like what I personally achieved in a company. So yeah, also like most most of the time these like works are very horizontally like I mean distributed to the worker. So sometimes we cannot make the decision that we cannot make. But in startups we can make decisions on ourselves. So that's the point.
And why did you decide then to move to the governmental sector after the startup sector? And what were the big differences? I can imagine that it's a huge difference there, but maybe you can go a bit deeper into that too.
Yeah. So actually, I think at the time I had no choice because the startup that I was working was burning. financially. And I just moved to Tokyo, and of course everything was much like more expensive than like living in different local area in Japan. So I just need to get another job, and friend invited me, and so I just jumped in. But later, after I joined the company, I found I can make use of my experience because the division that I was brought to was supporting these like entrepreneurs by providing this administrative service for through the center with Tokyo government. Then like nobody in the team was working for startups before, and I think nobody really speak English in the team. So I thought I can like make use of my like practical experience as a like employee working in a startup. So I reinvented I mean, I reinvented all the events that they are doing. And also I started to like explore international community in Japan, so that because there are not much information about how to start a business in Japan in English. So I started to like provide this information through the events and through my blogs.
So that's what you started when you were working in the government, and that's how you developed Startup Work Inc. afterwards. How is it now working independently, like being responsible for your own company? Isn't there a lot of pressure and stress compared to having actually a fixed job at the government or in the startup world?
I think I had much more pleasure when I was working in a government or
Oh,
corporate.
really? Wow.
The structure was like, so I was employed by a company, and the company got the project from Tokyo government. And maybe back to your question, the huge difference that I found between startup and the corporate was the first job that I was given. So like in the startup, everybody has to do everything. So like I
Yeah.
did everything, and of course in a corporate, of course too. But the in the corporate, the for the first 2 or 3 months, the only the main job that I was given was making a copy for my boss and shredding
Oh, wow.
paper. Also, like sometimes, of course, serving tea in Japan, right? So that wasn't something that startup like people in startup ask me all the time, because like that's not worth our time, right? So yeah, like I think that's the first time that I thought, oh, they give me like they have different perspective on like female worker in the corporate, and there was a big difference. So yeah, I was surprised.
You know, one of the things they say to a lot of new interns that come out of universities is they always advise them, if you're going to do an internship, try with a startup, because even like your job title or your role is never actually what you do, because you're going to be doing everything like you said. So that's really interesting. But I want to come back to, how they kind of perceived your role as a woman in corporate versus startup. So in the startup, I mean, if you were not the founder of your own startup, how, like, what's the dynamic of women in a startup in Japan, based on your experience?
Dynamic in let's see. um I don't know, like as long as they like, regardless of the gender, if they have good idea or like if they capture the needs correctly, I don't think there is any like difference between, for example, men and women. And also like, yeah, like I think you had great episode before, but like more and more women are trying to start a business, I think. And government is also offering some like kind of affirmative action, like they have special loan program for specifically women.
Yeah.
And yeah, also like I think the last episode was about like the lady entrepreneur who built their own business in a tech field. And that's something all the like including government and corporations, what they're targeting to expand right now. So yeah, I think the difference is getting like smaller and smaller every day, but still there is some difference, I think.
Yeah.
I think we're quite happy to see that there's this positive change, and it has been the drive for our previous episodes, including the one today. We've talked about it before when we first met, Miho. But when you were working in the government sector, did you also face some kind of sexism or discrimination in your work, just as a female employee, if I may ask?
I think so. I think discrimination is everywhere. So yeah,
Yeah.
of course and so I don't see so many people doing this kind of paperwork and doing legal support for entrepreneurs. So actually most of, I would say, competitor or most of my collaborators, I mean like judicial scriveners, administrative scriveners, they are mostly like 50 or 6 years old male. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very like outstanding in that sense. So yeah, some of them just directly ask, like say to me, like since you're like young and you don't have experience, like also like after I quit the company, like you are no longer with Tokyo government, so you cannot do anything by yourself. So it was very direct, but they just say it. So yeah,
And you proved them all wrong.
I always
That's
yes.
that's great. Exactly. That's how it should go.
You know,
For
given their structure, and you know, like you said, there's a lot of you know, quote unquote old men who are running the show in the government side in Japan, like a lot of other countries. Uh, um, do you feel like, you know, what they're doing for startups, Japanese and foreign startups, is enough? Like, do you think they're doing enough for women as leaders in Japan?
Yeah, I think they're trying a lot, but I think the the effort that they should make should be different directions sometimes. So, for example, I was like organizing as, I mean, like I was operating a center with the government, and the center was, for example, for like both Japanese and international entrepreneurs trying to start a business in Japan. Then like help them guide through all the processes at one place so that they can bring the paper in one place rather than bringing all the paper to different offices and running around 7 places. But right now, Japan is trying to digitalize everything. So actually, everything is getting online. So it might be better to like focus on how we can improve the system so that we don't even need to go anywhere. And yeah, also like since most of the like people working in the government sector, they don't know how startups works, right? So that kind of lack of experience leads different conclusion from what startups really needs help. So for example, right now, like still investment community is not big in Japan, but many investors are coming to Japan. They want to invest some startup. So like not many consultants understand how this investment terms works. And that's something that we have to build with government or like all the startup community in Japan.
You've mentioned now the gap between the startup world and the government work or government world. The government world, of course, tries to help startups, while the startups probably feel as if they are misunderstood. But the government is still doing the policies mostly. Would you give any suggestions to the government world or how this gap between understanding each other could be bridged?
So I think the best way is just start onboarding people who knows how startup works. So they can be, for example, like who was a CEO or COO of the company, I mean, in a startup before, or like who actually dealt with so many investment cases before. And like, so I will start collaborating with Shibuya government soon. But one of the very great thing about them is they're onboarding people from startup world and including international entrepreneurs. So I think it's very nice that like we can all make change internally. It's not like just like making a contract to the outsider, but like they can like in that case I think we can all bring that change into the like government internal system, I think.
I have a
What do
bit
you
of a
think?
different question.
Jump in, Bastian. Jump in.
Oh, thank you, Buzz. That's so kind.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Different question, and then I'll let Buzz talk. The words you mentioned, Shibuya. Shibuya always stands out a little bit from the rest of Tokyo, I would say. I mean, I think Shibuya was also the one who first legalized homosexual marriage or queer marriage, which is fantastic that they do. How does this word system actually work? So Shibuya, again, as you've mentioned, just took the step of trying to help out here. Is it different in the other words? Is that question clear?
I'm still also learning how the word system works, but I think Shibuya is very passionate to make change and to do new things. So yeah, in Tokyo it's kind of complicated because like the word itself can like work solely aside from the main government, right? But still they need to follow. So take a good example will be like maybe Fukuoka. So Fukuoka city is very like the fast city. I mean like the very unique city to take the first initiative for everything. So yeah, I think it all depends on the mayor and how they select the people who actually make the change, I think.
I love to insert this, and that's why Buzz probably changed back to the screen. I've lived in Fukuoka for 10 months. I love the city very much.
And that was your first stop there, right? When you first
It
came
was
to
my
Japan.
first stop in Japan, right? I lived there for 10 months, and I miss that city sincerely. Great city, especially for the startup world. I realized there's a lot of things going on.
Interesting. Actually, on that subject, just real quick, I'm gonna interject here. What do you see as like the startup hub in Japan? Is it Shibuya or is it something like Fukuoka?
I wanna say Shibuya because I live in Shibuya.
Yeah.
Actually, I lived in Fukuoka 10 months too. And so I think that's a great city. Everything is there. But still, like, for example, investment is mostly in like Tokyo. And all these like business people and businesses are concentrated in Tokyo. So yeah, I really wish like different startup city will like take the initiative. They're already doing, for example, like Sendai, Tsukuba, or like for example maybe Kyoto, Osaka, Kobe. These cities are trying to be startup city, but in terms of the scale, Tokyo is still the top one, and still many people are living here. So I think to make a scalable startup, I think as of now, Tokyo is the easiest place to start, I think.
Can I insert a question here as well and ask you, are you helping startups around Japan, or do you focus on Shibuya or Tokyo as a whole?
I am helping like the startups all over in Japan right now, but of course I live in Shibuya, so most of my clients are like basically based in Tokyo right now, and it's
And may I
easier.
ask, and may I ask what kind of startups they are? Do they follow a certain branch, or rather, are they part of a following? I will get it right. Are they part of a certain sector, or do they belong to lots of sectors?
I think it's very varies. So I would say most of them are relating to tech because it's very easy to start if they want to start, for example, like I don't know, if they wanna start a like manufacturer, it's gonna cost a lot. They have to use so much initial investment. So tech industry is one, and also education or acceleration program, because they just need the idea and like they just have to build the community, which is difficult but easier in terms of the finance. So yeah, I think tech companies, education, or yeah, acceleration. These are the companies that I'm helping right now.
Cool. Buzz, going back to you. What was your question?
Well, I jumped in and I cut you off anyway, so I asked the question already. It was about Shibuya. But I have another question, actually, given that you're putting me on the spot, Bastian. I want to go back to your blog here. So I'm looking at this article specifically. It's the one about why nobody can figure out the right path for visa procedures. So you've been telling us in our previous discussion, Miho, that a lot of people seem to ask you this question, and a lot of people seem to be confused about the whole process. I want to, spend the next maybe 10, 20 minutes or so talking about foreigners in Japan and their rights. So, what do you know what do foreigners in Japan need to know about what their rights are in Japan? What do you like, based on your experience, the people you speak to, what's like the biggest thing that people don't know they have the right to do, or they know they should do, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think most of them have very little rights right after they land Japan. And I think their first struggle will be about bank account. So like as far as I am aware, all the banks refuse to open a new bank account, I mean personal account, for those living less than 6 months in Japan. But for example, most of my clients just came to Japan to start a business, so they really need to have a personal account to like transfer their capital, and also like transfer the capital to corporate bank account. But technically it's impossible because like they cannot open the bank account. So that's one thing, of course. Also regarding the rights, as I wrote on the blog post, immigration law is like very, I mean, I wouldn't say ambiguous, but like it's solo discretion. So like the immigration bureau can decide what I mean, whatever they want in terms of the like legal procedures. So like basically, if it's like administrative process, there is a law called an administrative law, so-called administrative law, and according to this administrative law, if government, for example, refuse to give a license to start a business, but if the reasoning is not like clear enough, we can ask why it's declined, and government has to reply why it's declined. And there should be some clear discussion about the government procedures. But this so-called administrative law is not applicable to immigration procedures. So like practically all like people who are getting visa can ask questions if their visa is declined, but there is no specific law that states that people can ask the reason of decline to the immigration bureau. So in terms of the rights, it's very still ambiguous, and like it's very hard to like state or like make decision, like how to say, like I like in short, I would just say like foreigners with visa have less power to make decision how they wanna do the process in Japan.
I'm wondering whether or not they're correct or not. What are the main reason the government gives when they decline a business?
In terms of the business, it's relating to the kind of the, let's say, mm, the like, for example, some of the business like will compete if they are locating too close. So it's sometimes because of the location in terms of the business. Mm, yeah.
Okay. The problem is, or one of the problems is that a foreigner would go to Japan, they will have their own visa, of course, you know, they, or rather, just to understand it correctly, when they come to Japan, on what kind of visa are these foreigners?
So most of them hold engineer humanity international service visa, which is the like normal working visa.
And that
And
lasts for
from,
around like 12 months, right?
12 months, or I think if it's provided by a listed company or a big company, they can get 3 years or 5 years visa instantly.
Okay.
and during that time, or while they're holding this visa, they're allowed to start a company in Japan.
Not. I mean, no,
No?
no. So like they can, because like they cannot change their visa status until they establish a company. So they have to establish a company, but so they have 3 months to change their visa after they establish a company. So they have to convert the visa to, let's say, business manager visa.
I see. Okay, so they come to Japan with this, well, what is it called? Engineering visa,
A
let's say,
working visa, yeah, working
working visa,
holiday.
right? And then they start, when they decide to start a company, then at that point in time, they have 3 months to convert the visa to the other visa, which allows them to basically really start and run their own business in Japan, correct?
Yeah, like in short, yes. So,
That sounds like a little time, to be honest. 3 months.
Yeah.
of course, yeah. So yeah, basically all of the like visa holders need to follow the activities designated in the like the visa. So if it's, for example, engineer visa, they are supposed to do engineer activity. So doing business and as a representative director is not a engineer work. So they have to cooperate, and usually they, well, within the 3 months after they change the main activity, they have to change the visa status.
And there again, I'll ask again just to clarify. What should foreigners know about this process when they start the business? What is the biggest challenge and what tips would you give them?
I think so. Research is very crucial here. So there are not like only one visa option for them, but there are usually 2 or 3 options for all of them. So for example, like if they have like strong academic background, or if they have like lots of, I mean, like like they, if they're credible as a like highly skilled professional in Japan, there is another visa called highly skilled professional visa. So with that visa, for example, they can open a company without like changing the visa. So they're allowed to own their own company. And also they don't need to invest like 5 million yen like the other business manager, or they don't have to have a dedicated office space under like highly skilled professional visa if they want to open a business. So like knowing this kind of option will give them more like opportunity to think another way to start a business in Japan. But if they didn't know, and if they just start with the application, then we cannot go back. So yeah, doing research enough is very crucial, I think, before
So
making anything.
basically, the Japanese visa process application is kind of like it starts with, multiple paths as the first step, and you have to make sure you keep picking the right one in order to achieve the place that you want to be in Japan in the end. Otherwise, if you take the wrong branch, you might get stuck somewhere and you might have to start from the beginning or something, right? Am I getting
Exactly.
Seems
Yeah,
like a
so
complicated process.
yes, very
You've
complicated.
you've mentioned some requirements they actually need to start a startup. What are they? You mentioned office space. I
And
believe you mentioned. I
yeah,
assume language as well.
yeah. So yeah, the main criteria is office plus 5 million yen capital, which is a lot for most people, I think. Mm,
That's a lot, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's something that we cannot change right away because that's already decided in the immigration law. So that's the big hurdle for entrepreneurs who needs visa. Mm.
The money part I can see as something that is possible to do. I mean, it's a lot of money for sure. But the office part I deem as more difficult because how do you rent a space or how do you get a space if you have a visa that might not allow you to do so? Or I mean, there are also other requirements to actually get an office space, no?
So yeah, it's also like they have to talk with real estate agency, and I think nowadays there are more and more like foreign friendly real estate agencies, so it's getting easier little by little. But yes, still office requirement is very hard for everybody, especially like we don't need any office right away, like right now after COVID, because we found we can just work remotely. But still, according to the law, like they are supposed to have a dedicated office space where they can lock with the key. So this is outdated. Yeah.
Okay. Going back to something more personal, I guess, why did you decide to help actually foreigners starting a business?
I just thought that's too tough for them.
Hmm.
Yeah, also, like, so when I was operating the center, there were about 10 consultants in the center who is like national certified. So they should be able to get any kinds of answers from them. But still, like they contacted me so often because I was doing PL, so they knew my contact information. And most of the questions were something that nobody in the center could answer. And I thought like like they will be in trouble in the future as well. And like there seems like nobody who can actually help them guide through this complicated system. So I studied like by myself. Then also I asked some consultants, and yeah, I thought, what if I can just help them, then like guide them through everything, so that they can save so much of their time and they can just focus on business development. So that's the main reason that I started my business.
Fascinating. Thanks for doing that. Definitely reach out to her if you need any help with your business in Japan, if someone is listening this or hearing this. You've been also abroad for quite some time, right? Maybe we can ask you a question about your time in Kenya. I'm kind of curious. It's a completely different topic, I know, but what made you go to Kenya and how was your experience now then in that country?
Um, so I decided to go to Kenya because I was majoring international relations in the university, and I learned like some stuff about, for example, like economic development or like the difference, economic difference in the world. So I asked my university teacher, like, did you ever go to like some of these countries, because you've been talking about like Kenya, Africa, and these people are like very like have very these people have less privilege in terms of like finance. So but no not many professors been to actually Africa or any kinds of countries, and they're just teaching, and I was just learning sitting in the university. So I thought it's just nonsense that I just learn without knowing what's actually happening. So I decided to go and see what's actually happening. So I was involving in a community-based organization, and I was visiting from home that HIV positive lady was living. Yeah.
See, that's why I kind of expected an answer like that a little bit. So I can still connect it to your motivation of why you want to help foreigners. You always had that spirit of helping out, and you've done so as well abroad. Being aware of the time, let me ask the question of what kind of general suggestions would you give to a foreigner starting a business, or also a Japanese starting a business?
So
Maybe we can recontextualize it a little bit. Maybe in 2021, what's like the firm advice that you'd give to those people about starting a business?
I would say before starting any, I mean, before starting a legal entity and officially start a business, I would suggest them to find a market that they can, for sure, they can sell something. And yeah, also research a lot before starting anything. Some of my clients just quit the company and saying, I want to start a business. That's why I just quit. But they didn't know anything about visa, so like they have to go back to the like corporate society again. So that also like waste their time. So yeah, research a lot and find a market. These two.
And do you have any specific suggestions during the Corona pandemic? It must be more difficult now to start a business or to go into the startup world.
Yes, it is difficult, but one of the strengths that startup has is they can pivot anytime, not like the other like corporate, like huge organization. So try to pivot all the time whenever something happens.
Great, thank you.
What a way to wrap it up. Well, thank you very much for your time, Miho. It's been a real pleasure to have you today on the show. Thank you so much for sharing so many interesting insights on the world of business, startups, and legislation in Japan. Honestly, we've just scratched the surface and we definitely want to look into having you again sometime in the future. And to our audience, thank you very much for tuning in as usual. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, give it a like and share it with your friends. Or if you're an entrepreneur looking to enter the startup world of Japan, look no further than Miho's Startup Work Incorporated. The website is startupjapan.work. You can find the links in the description for that. And definitely check out Miho's blog. Lots of interesting and useful info on startups and entrepreneurship in Japan, and very useful information all in English. So you can find all the links in the description. Have a lovely Saturday, everyone. And Miho, thank you very much for joining us on Bento Bureau. See you around, everybody.